So, you know, when I come to a new place, I try to capture a sense of the symbol of the place. And of course, you know, not being used to go to Berlin, of course, I look at this Berlin with this huge symbol of reunion and the whole story of the wall and so on. And I have the impression that this image you know, being a part of something, separate, part again, and so on. I realized, looking at the legends of Berlin, that it seems to be a special quality of the place. I was wondering, you know, how many people know actually the legends of Berlin itself. There is this beautiful legend, founding legend about Berlin and Köln. Köln, you pronounce it like that, yeah? Yeah. Meeting of two people and finding a way to arrange and find a certain kind of friendship. And I thought it's a perfect image, because what I would like to share with you and hope that you can keep is this necessity nowadays to bring things together that seem to go fragmented, and find again something that holds everything together. So it might be two things, like Berlin, Western Berlin East, or Jerusalem, or other dreadful stories that happen in places everywhere. But it's also the fragmentation of the modern world. And I think, in my eyes, I found in depth psychology, you know, it's really a word that I like because it gives immediately an idea. It's really a psychology that has to do with depth, you know, with the things we don't see. One of the main ideas is actually, I could even sum it up with an alchemical saying, solve et coagula. Solve the thing, find the bricks out, you know, when you are in a great trouble and so on. Try to find the separate bricks of your life, what happens in all the corners, and coagula, aggregate them on a higher level. And first of all, aggregate it with this sense of it's many things hold together in whole, and find this paradox again, because I really have the impression, I don't know, you know, you're nearly all much younger than me, but I have this impression to feel the world that is fragmented on many, many levels, and that we have actually lost images that bring things together in a good way, and not in a forced way. And just with complementarity, which is one way to describe these different fragments. When you say complementary, it means they complement each other. For those who speak German, it's ergänzen. But if you use it in a scientific way, complementarity actually always contains an underlying unity. Because you can say that two things are complementing each other only if they have something to do together. So if you can take one of these ideas, you know, what we try to do is to see all the different manifestation of life with disrupting things and so on, and try to capture this sense that we can go with depth psychology to a certain place that is also capable to hold the whole thing together. And whole, in English, whole, healing is the same root. And I think you have it also in German with eine ganze Vase. If I'm not wrong, I think it also means vase that is one, that is complete. So finding these roots, finding these kind of paradox between fragmentation and something that holds the whole thing, has a healing quality. And you know, this is a mystery. I cannot explain it why, but that's what we experience when we work therapeutically. Each time you can give to a person a larger dimension, it feels like getting back in a way in a home, finding a place in the net of the world. And this is so dreadfully needed in so many places. Just think of Syria or wherever, where everything seems to crumble. So it's nice to have also ways that are nearly scientific, but they are also linked with the feelings and emotion and heart, that allows us to actively try to find these threads that contain things that seem so impossible to put together. So for this, Berlin is really a nice place. Now, you see, depth psychology from the beginning, with the word itself, puts something that psychology that could be the conscious side and the unconscious. Now, if you have questions and something is not clear, we are here to go forward. So just jump in and ask if something is not clear, because we are so used to this kind of jargon, and I might lose you. So unconscious is, what is unconscious? Now, for example, when you sleep and dream, there is a kind of something that notices a dream, but I would already say that seems to belong quite clearly to the unconscious, because you didn't do it, it came to you, it happened to you. Now, of course, with all the, the nuances between remembering dreams, or even going into dream fantasies and asking, unknown people in yourself, well, what will this person say? And then comes something. Now, this is in between consciousness and unconscious, and it's very precious, because we usually have the impression we make everything with consciousness, but as biology shows, much more is already present, nearly instinctively, and comes to us. So you will see that's an emphasis with depth psychology. We don't put the emphasis on consciousness, planification, organization, only knowledge. We add the other dimension, and we are quite outrageous because we say unconscious, because we have no idea how to call it. Sometimes in French, for example, they say le subconscient, and I prefer the unconscious, not the subconscious, because it simply says that's the unknown. But nevertheless, we have capacities to go to these roots, because you can remember a dream, or you can look at the old stories of Berlin. Now, is this conscious, is it not conscious? I'm not going to make, a clear separation, but that you have this idea of the poles, and our society now, the current society, in, or ways that, for example, in universities, is in science and so on, is really focused on consciousness, planification, organization, controlling, and so on. And we say the contrary. We say, when we see a problem, we say, listen to the symptoms, listen to the occasion, because it contains a message that has no other good way to come to us than through symptoms, disruption, destruction, I don't know what. So what we do is actually try to read all the illnesses, the troubles, and try to understand what is the message, and what do we do here? We make a connection to these separate parts. So someone comes who is neurotic and has, I don't know, any kind of neurosis, washes the hand every, second minute and so on. What we try to find out is, in the symptom, what could be hidden? And you will see that the idea of the symbolic understanding is fundamental, because, when I would do like this and I would tell you, what could that be? You would immediately have associations, not through, definitions and so on. Well, you might wash your hands from dirt. Or you might say, I suppose you say also like this in German, like Pilat. I'm not concerned, Or it can be a dirt, and you would have to wash the dirt and put it out and so on. That's a symbolic attitude. And so we listen to all the disturbances and try to make a bridge. And you see, you must be in love somewhere with these dreadful things to be able to make a connection, a relationship. So that's why I thought, Berlin is so beautiful, because every time you have two things that are separate and are brought together, you have a relationship, or you have the awareness of a connectedness. And that's the quality also that we have lost nowadays. And first of all, we have lost the connectedness with a larger dimension. Now, this larger dimension might be ecology, the planet, very concrete, practical. But inside, it can also be, and we nearly have no words anymore that we can really use properly, but I would say with the divine, with the larger, with the dimensions that knows more than you, that has an absolute or objective knowledge. We have exactly lost this, and you will see how much this is connected when I'm going to give you, I thought I would try to have something like 5 tools, or 5, you know, in psychology you never say really a tool because it's a tool in a revelation at the same time, but a kind of tools that you can yourself try to go into the depths, to the roots of all the things, of natural cycles or of psychological cycles. And symbol is fundamental. So, and so if you can remember really this, it's about the manifest world, the concrete world, is always damned to be plural. And it's only with an enormous effort that we can have a sense of unity. And nowadays we have the tendency to think, well, unity, I can do it, you know, and simply I suppress now this, speak this language, this, and you just throw the people away. That's not unity. And this is going exactly to produce symptoms, because everything that is legitimately on life, in life, you cannot put it aside without having a chance that it comes backwards in a destructive way. Because you have lost it from the eyes, you have lost connection. And it's the only way for these things to present themselves in form of symptoms and problems and disturbances and whatever. So you see, just already here, if we listen to the larger pattern, we are not exactly the kings or the egos that decided everything. What we try to do is to align ourselves with a deeper dimension. And by the way, when you do it, then you get the whole energy of the objective knowledge and whatever. If you absolutely decide, I'm going to decide this and this, and I don't mind, I'm going to overcome any obstacle, then if you do it only with the power in mind, either you are going to suffer, or the surroundings, or nature. So it's about a lesson of humility. Humility, you know. So you already see, you know, I describe a pattern. If you continue it a little bit in a larger realm, okay, so I listen to what life wants to me. If I'm too one-sided, I have a neurosis that tells me in, you know, in cryptic ways, you're missing this, you should look at that, and so on and so on. Now, if I enlarge this, that means that it seems that the world has something like a project with us and wants something. And if we deviate too much of whatever it is, then we have the destructive symptoms coming in. Now, I hope, did you get the pattern, how we work? You know, and you see, so it means that the underlying unity or the underlying whatever, unconscious and so on, seems to have a precise feeling of regulation. So of course, you know, if you are like, for example, there is this wonderful musician called Kurtak, you know, as a Hungarian. Now he's over 90 and he's writing an opera, and he puts his whole energy on this. Because he knows, he doesn't know how long he's going to live. Now, this is not a one-sidedness that is linked with power in this sense, but it's in the service of something that goes through him. So that I'm clear, you know, that when I say something like this, it's not about putting ego and planning and so in the dustbin. It's about complementing it and knowing, you know, if you start studying, you have to say, okay, finish with looking at films, finish with sports and so on, I have to make my exams. Now, it's in purpose of something that can be of service to something greater. Then it's right to be one-sided. But you cannot do it over excessively without paying. So that would be the large pattern. Now, how are we with the time? Yes. So, to understand maybe a little bit more dynamically why depth psychology nowadays works like it works, as it works. Now, try to imagine yourself humankind when it was very close to animals. They didn't have consciousness, but they live, and you know, everybody who has a cat or a bird sees that these animals seem always to act in synchrony with the instincts. Now, we have the chance to say, not obliged to do everything instinctive, you know. And a woman can now study, she doesn't have 12 or 15 or 20 children or so. Now, as soon as you have consciousness, you have something that can decide to get away from the instincts, from the natural cycles. And of course, then there is immediately the question, how much is legitimate for the whole? And how and when does it start to be so one-sided that something starts to get upside down? And the older culture had, for example, ecstasy to bring them back in a state of animal, and it's no hazard that most of the older culture would put a mask on their head where we have so much consciousness of an animal and dance to put themselves in this genial quality of the animal that just does, if you want, what God wants of them, or what nature wants of them, which is the same, and so on. So we have to find a way to, put consciousness all the time, again, in the whole context. Now, that would be nearly an easy definition of ethics. Now, you can take ethics, really, because I tried to find these kind of explanations that could work also to the tradition and would also be something for animals, and if you can go further down to plants and so on. So if you define ethics is a way to behave that keeps the larger picture in account. Ethics. So ecologically would say would mean behave as ethically would be, okay, what can, for example, the planet digest? So and so much, and I have to apply this. Otherwise, I know that destructive symptoms are going to happen. Now, if we use too much energy, then of course, for example, we have the climate change or whatever. You see the pattern. So, old way to do it is ecstasy, and I think dance always has this kind of thing that puts you again, grounds you, puts you in your axis. And we have, of course, a modern way in depth psychology that is much more homeopathic, if you want, is to listen to the dreams. Of course, because we have so little time, I'm going to say certain things that are a little bit, schematic, because you have many things. You can also draw and simply let your pencil draw what it comes. That's the same thing, but you try to find ways to get into this kind of instinctual way again. But because we are human with an ear. So if we make what we call active imagination, and I think there is no artist or scientist that doesn't do this, you try to ask an inner figure or a material. I'm a biologist, an ecologist, so I made research. Now, I would also ask, now matter, please tell me what would you like to be, how would you like to be studied, or what comes? And it's amazing what comes through the dreams. Okay, so you can ask these figures to talk to you and let them have the autonomy to speak to you. This is a way to get in contact with a larger picture. So, for example, with a dream. So you have someone new that comes into your office, and you have the impression, boring people or whatever, something negative. And then you go home, you dream, and what do you dream? For example, the person is on a tower or is with a golden crown. So you see, this instance that is capable to regulate psyche, as we know it, with blood pressure and warmth and everything, is regulating and giving you a hint that your picture is a little bit one-sided. So if you want dream and conscious life together form this whole. So this is a very personal way to do it. Now we are interested in this ecology. Now you can do the same thing, and of course it's a little bit different if you want. What we do is, instead of listening to the dreams or to miss for a city or other unconscious material, what we do, we take the issue, the ecological issue, as if it would be a dream. Or you take money issue. We have one monetary system. What do we have? We have constantly something that grows, wants to grow, and of course crashes, because everybody who knows a little bit natural cycles knows that nothing can grow in a finite system without having a collapse somewhere. Okay, so you listen to and look at all the facts that you can find about an ecological theme or a more general, you see, I'm speaking of ecology, but you can use it for any kind of things. You can do the same thing with a film. And if you want to make a film critic, you take exactly the same tools. So now, for example, I'm doing it because my older biological colleagues, they tell me, "Oh, could you make something on the deer?" For the moment, I'm working madly about the deer. What is the deer? What are the images of the deer? And so on and so on. Now, it's not easy for you to grasp what the deer could be. But if I would tell you the wolf, and that, facts like in Paris, they made research and asked the children about to 6, 7, 8 years, what do you fear most in Paris? And 90 over, I don't know how much percent say the wolf. And I would bet that not many of them have seen a true wolf, even in the zoo. So you see, there you capture that the wolf is carrying something much more than simply being a kind of wild dog. You see the idea? And that's what we try to track down. Because these images, if we are not conscious of them, they play a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous role. For example, everywhere, all the countries try to have more sources of energy, more sources of energy, more sources of energy, concrete, be it atomic, water, wind, or whatever. And we are a depressed civilization because we are not able to find the inner source. Now, to me, of course that's really summed up, but to me, looking carefully in all these things, there is a relationship between psychological needs, and if they are not taken seriously, they go unconscious and then project themselves on outer means. So there is about money and energy in form of fuel and so on, the same projection of actually the psychological need to have access to psychic energy. And once again, if you look only like this, in consciousness, you are not going to be very much fed by ideas of energy. But if you start to look through all the layers from consciousness to the most unconscious things that you can go, then you realize that it's the same topic that is behind both. And if we can realize, each time you ask yourself, okay, we have a problem with energy. Now, what is the situation psychologically? And then you look at both things, and at a certain moment you realize, there is something, we look too much for outer energy and not enough for inner energy. You have already a program. You have a program. And you can do something out of it. Of course, it's difficult to translate it into something concrete, but we must start somewhere. And what I realized when I work with people from nature protection, for example, once they had what they call quality assessment, something like this, where they try to look, now what do we do with parks and wilderness? And everybody encounters problems, and they don't understand why people are against parks and wild areas and so on. And I worked with them and just told them, a little bit what is behind the image of wilderness. Wilderness is chaos, something that is not controlled, and what you have. So nowadays, if we have no teaching in how to control our instincts, our bull, you know, how to ride our inner bulls and horses and so on. Now this is going to be projected on these other issues outside. And then people are against wilderness, you know, because they think, well, yeah, but you know, and then it's not allowed to go there, and it's threatening, and you don't know which kind of wolves are going to come, and so on and so on. And I worked only half day with them, and I realized, you know, that they could capture that if they were not aware of their images, as usually urban people in nature protection, you go to people who are at the front to wilderness. If there is not this connection, and you don't put yourself in the skin and the heart and the problems of the person, no relationship to the other, then you speak to a wall, and even more, it gets counterproductive, and then you have one of these splits. And on the contrary, if you are aware that behind wilderness and fear of chaos and I don't know what, there is a similar image, then you get like free energy, because then you have this idea, okay, now how much is psychological? Oh yes, I should do this and this and this, and a little bit, you know, reduce that and that. You are freer. So each time you get an idea of symbol, you know, what a symbol is, you get also freer energy. And you see, the free will is free psychic energy, free will. And if you look around, we have a culture that doesn't make it easy to care for this free will, because we are more and more now taken over by technology, for example. So, and I'm not against technology, but I'm against the part that is illegitimately, unconsciously projected onto technology. So, what I would like to do now is go a little bit into symbol, that you have a kind of tool. Now, the definition we give to symbol, it is not a sign. A symbol is much, much more. We use it it's a definition, you know. You can have another definition, but I give you the one that helps for these kind of thoughts. And it's not exclusive in any way. It's an image, an object, an image, a person, an image, philosophically speaking, that represents much more than what it concretely is. Now, I don't have really a typical object, but you know, I could take the clock. It's much more than simply this instrument. It's maybe, it's not the case, but it could be something that I received from my grandfather. You see what I mean? There is a whole life behind. And of course, the more the symbol is important to you, the more there is an emotional charge. If I would lose it and it was really one of my grandfathers, I would really mind. You see, or the cross. You know, for certain people, the cross is eminently charged. And you see, that can change. You know, our culture isn't the cross isn't so charged anymore as it has maybe been. So, it's an image that represents much more than its manifest reality. And the quality or the importance of the symbol is given by the emotional charge it has. You see, different from science. We have definitions that always take in feeling in the sense of an evaluating factor that you cannot easily measure with a technical instrument. You can, but it's not appropriate. But usually if you ask someone, is it important to you? People will immediately tell you, no, it's not important. Yes, it's very important. And you capture this quality. And then you know, and you can help yourself to make the map of the different symbols. And the symbol has, you must imagine it's like a living animal, living being. It comes from somewhere, and it wants to go somewhere, and it wants to grow, you know, or to expand, and so on. And it's an amazing transformer of energy. Now, this is abstractly said. Now try to imagine, you try to find out which kind of studies should I do? And you have no idea. And you have no energy, and everything boring, the same. And then suddenly you discover, I don't know why, you meet someone that plays beautifully the cello, and you say, oh, that's it. And then afterwards you're capable, to put everything aside, your whole finance into it, and you study. Now, this is what I mean with transformation of energy. When you have the symbol, or when the symbol has you, then you have access to the energy that is linked in a color in a certain way to the object. It's a best image that we have at disposition for an unknown thing that is behind. So, and there is all, once again, the alchemists are actually our forefathers who were able to put certain truths in very simple ways about the functioning of the psyche. Now, one of them is who has the symbol has an easy transition. And of course, who doesn't have the symbol has a hard time. And we are a time of unconscious symbols, and for me this is fundamental. Money is an unconscious symbol nowadays, hugely charged, but it's unconscious. We don't have an altar where I say, oh, money is stronger than me, and I have my altar, and certain times I think, yeah, you're very powerful, you're very great. We don't have that, and that's a loss. But with depth psychology, you can be aware of that and listen in this symbolic way, develop a kind of symbolic attitude to everything. And then actually, life is never boring. You can encounter something strange and so on, and then you start, now what could it be? Which kind of message is there in it? What does it want to become? And first of all, it allows us, when you have trouble, for example, vandalism with young people or whatever kind of problem, you just step back. Don't identify with the problem and be upset. No, you say, I'm very upset by that. That's why I have to put it here on the table and study it. And look what comes to your mind about it, and what is it and how does it behave. And you try to describe it like a myth. You try to make a story out of it. It seems to come from this, it's linked with that, and it develop like this, and it has this and this an effect. Then you have the story. And then afterwards you absolutely deal to try to interpret it as a dream. So that's one of these tools. Now, are there questions? Because, it's really, that's a treasure trove if you have this capacity, this position. And, to do gratuitously, you can just take it. It's amazing. It's a transformer of energy. It's really, the idea of the golden stone. When you have this kind of attitude, you can change so many things into something that can become conscious, can become gold, but can, symbolically speaking, but truly can become something conscious. And when something is more or less conscious, it signifies that you see the island come out of the sea, or the lake, and you can go there and have a relationship. And then you can build up to the moment that the island maybe becomes a part of an archipel or, your continent. So that's, psychically speaking, if you want, of these practical outer images. And then the symbol, it has 4 qualities. And the third quality of the symbol is that it unites opposites. And you have a beautiful idea here. I think that for many, many German people and other people in Europe too, the idea that once maybe Germany would be able to join was a powerful symbol. And I don't say that it was always only positively charged, because it was also affraying people, because it would make a huge country. But you see, there was something, it meant to so many people that the reunion with great efforts would be possible. And so that unite opposite, of course, there is another aspect to very simply speaking. Since the symbol tends to have roots in the unconscious, it allows to make a link between consciousness, what you see, what you know, and something mysterious and from the beginning has a core that is unknown. and makes a kind of thread. And that's why, for me, it's a genial concept in analytical psychology to have this idea, you know, along the symbolic understanding, you can go along these lines that bring you in one way or the other to this kind of fundamental unity, underlying unity. And the fourth that I should have actually said as the first is symbols, or how shall I say? Yeah, a symbol. The symbols are the natural language of the unconscious. It's not philosophical language that is the most immediate language. The immediate language is symbols, images, stories, you know. And if you look carefully, they always have something living. It's not simply something dead that you can simply put on a wall and that's finished. It's always something that you see, and each time you see this painting and so you say, oh, wow, it's so, you know, so wonderful, is it beautiful, or it brings me to life and so on. That's the quality it has, is this language of the unconscious. And of course, that's exactly the language that we have lost. But, you know, for me, it's always so wonderful because the less people have been at university, I'm a university person, so I can say so. And you say something about this symbol, the easier they grasp it, because it's so still living. You can speak, I had the chance to work with people in Africa who live in very remote areas. They live symbolically all the time. So they don't need any kind of bridge to us, because if we speak of dreams and so on, immediately we have an international, common, universal language. And if you have people who have not studied, who are farmers or so, I realize that they have it still quite under the surface. And they feel so relieved when you speak about that. Because it's such another, do you see the turn? It's another kind of knowledge than the knowledge in the books. Or even in Wikipedia, but Wikipedia can also be a good book about symbols, of course. Now, if you must have the symbolic ear, then everything in the newspaper, everything what happens has this symbolic quality. It's up to you to open yourself to this other dimension. And actually, to me, it's poetry. You know, it's a poetic ear. I think that those who love poetry, you always read poetry with a symbolic ear. You know, and you speak of a window and a bird passes. You see a whole universe, you know, and you can be connected and so on. So typically symbolic. And we have lost the poetic attitude, I think. So that's about symbol. Four points. An image that represents more than its manifest reality, a transformer of energy. It unites opposites. How are we with the time? Unites opposites, and language as the words of the unconscious. Now, for those who are interested, a myth is a story full of symbols, you know. So, now what we do is that in analysis, we use it as a tool, but we experience it very often as a revelation, and that makes it difficult. So try to imagine, let's say, here you have the unconscious, and here you have the conscious. Now, people come with dreams. So, they present us symbols. You know, it's a revelation of symbols. And you have a dream about a bear, and it was so impressive, or whatever. Revelation. And we use the same kind of channels, if you want, or thing, and go backwards to try to capture, but it's rooted with what in the unconscious. So symbol is as well something that is given to us, and something that we can develop it as a heuristic tool, as a tool that allows you to know more, to discover more, to be more rooted. So now, we had already a kind of talk about projection. Now, projection. Now, if you think of children, at the beginning, they are one with the surroundings. Now, it's schematic. You could maybe find another way to describe it. And it seems that at the beginning, everything is at the same time inside and outside. So the mother outside is very important. The father outside is very important, also the caring people. And then slowly you have a certain age that you certainly have realized, when they have this kind of little animal and so on. And then you tell the child, I have to go out, I'm going to be back in an hour, and so on and so on. And you see the child that takes this kind of thing as transitional objects, they call it in certain psychologies, which I find so helpful. It's the beginning of symbolic thinking. It's not exactly me, it's not exactly the concrete mother, caring person or father. It's in between, and it's so beautiful because with the children you see that it's symbolic, So it can be whatever kind of animal or a piece of stuff, or what it can be, whatever. So that's the beginning. But at the beginning, everything is first outside, and it's even one of the sentences that we would say. The unconscious is always first outside, and we don't speak of projection as long as there is no problem, because it's legitimate. It's so. And then culture is a kind of way to take out of these images one piece by one piece. For example, the numbers used to be gods at the beginning. They had protein, it's a one, the one and the one and the one, or the two or whatever, or the Slavic god Triglav, I think, who was revered here in Köln, three-faced god. So with the time, people realize that there is an aspect that is conscious, that you can draw out of it, and you can make mathematics. And it's a huge cultural step to take a god out of the altar and bring it down. And older culture knew that, and they kept it and used it, and would say, oh yes, the god of mathematics or whatever, or astronomy or so. And we have lost that. So we have the impression that we have the numbers at disposition. And it's always interesting, if you have mathematicians around you, ask them, are the numbers given, or do you invent them? By the way, invent actually means also find. But we say invent in French, and when we say invent, we really mean I decided that I could do this and this and this. So there you can capture, if someone is open to this kind of things, oh, they were given to us, and if a Chinese person makes something with numbers, they have the same qualities, and they will add in the same way, We found it somewhere. We didn't really only, we capture it, that's a conscious step, but we didn't really invent it from scratch. So, projection, yeah. Now, this is maybe a theme that we could look further, how are these steps of taking back a projection describable so that we can help taking them back? And I would speak of projection only if it's disturbing. And it's not right to say, oh, these people or this nation or so, they live on such a low level of consciousness because they still believe in gods in trees. No, because the people who are still in this kind of sense are much closer to the cycles of nature, and there is never a reason in my eyes to destroy something like this if it's not given from themselves, because it's hard. And nowadays we are not aware of this enough. When we make something new in genetics, do we have enough care to keep it in the cycles? Or do we go out of it, and actually, the summary is nowadays, the solutions of today are the problems of tomorrow. Because we didn't take the care to try to see now, yeah, but what is a larger pattern? Is it a neurotic symptom, or is it something that is really truly creative and brings culture on a higher level? Okay, and once again, culture is an addition of projections that have been taken back. So there is the quality of being able to count with mathematics. That is a quality to know how to play any kind of instrument. this has been drawn out, dragged out of the possibilities of nature, and becomes something that when you have it at disposition, you can teach it to someone else, and the person has this free energy at disposition. You see the thing? So you see that when I speak of symbol, I never can do it without the object, the subject of energy, because it conveys this capacity of energy. Now another point, just let me check if there is one important point. No, actually we could maybe try to sum it up, because taking, you know, the advertising that you had, it's about really this big change that we have to do to get again in contact with the natural cycles that ecology and the ecological world can survive. Now, I'm a biologist, and I find the state of the world, and I'm older than you. What I have seen, you know, think of the plastic in the oceans that you cannot take out and so on, is getting so dreadfully awful. Now, it's important not to get too depressed by this. But we must be aware that the situation is really urgent. But we have tools for this change. And if you can realize that actually when you can learn more about yourself, when you put psyche in center stage, you do an enormous positive thing for ecology. Because then at least the charge that you illegitimately project outside, you can take it back. And that's one thing to do it personally, but I think we have to find new ways to speak about that. And that's why I'm so actually moved to see so many people of you open to this kind of questions. What can we do? Which kind of tools do we have? What new ways do we have? Is to help make the analysis of the outer situations in a symbolic way. Because then it's not so desperate, because you can say to any person, you know, but you know, maybe your way is to do it inwardly. If you can find the right way to deal with your own energy, you will have an effect everywhere. And you're not going to be necessarily have your holidays so far away to get to these totally unknowns that you have in your dreams, for example. You see what I mean? There is also a practical side to it. And to learn to bring this in new forms with films. I really believe in dance and film and music to transmit this kind of symbolic knot where everything is contained and makes you also peaceful and contained. Because, you know, for example, behind vandalism, behind terrorism, there is a loss of identity, a tremendous loss of identity. And then everything is an attempt, you know, to say, my limits are here and so on. You do it outside, projected on other countries and other people and on war and so on. So if we can, you know, and distribute this knowledge about, but, you know, we can look at these kind of things, and if you can remember, once again, we go back to close to Berlin and this capacity to bring things again together. Every war is a marriage that has failed. So it's a call to bring things together that are very difficult but must and belong together. And you know, already something like this, you know, it can be revolutionary. You know, and it's difficult to bring it into action. Now, I come from Switzerland, and we have a very special, I think, privilege of history, that we were thrown together in the middle of the mountains with different languages, with different ways of mentalities, very different from, you know, the people really in the mountains or in the plains. You had the cities, and you had the Protestants and Catholic and so on. We have, for example, the government, who are 7 people, and there is not a president. We have a college. So we have this old tradition that plurality is something very slow. We are very slow at changing something. But when it happens, it's carried by a larger group. And this image is, I think, really helpful for this complementarity. And we are used to actually have the fights inside, the 7 people are in the room, and they are not allowed to say what happens and how they fight in the room. When they go out, they have one solution. So it allows the people to keep their face and change their opinion. And I think if you can change your opinion, then something can grow. If you cannot, because you lose everything, then it gets rigid. So I think this is really something that touches me very much, that one country, and it's not chauvinism, it's about they had the chance, it's small, you know, that it's easier. And, but the fights, you know, we don't have only 2 parties like in the States. We have, I don't know, 15 parties or so, and maybe 4 or 5 main, and all the time. But there is this consciousness that we have to find a way that everybody can live without being rejected. So that's what I meant, you know, with this complementarity, or with this. And if you really can remember that unity is something transcendent in the core. But of course, you know how numinous it is when you have this feeling of unity with one person, with a friend, or with a beloved. And that it never holds very long. But if we know that it's something very precious because we had a hint about it, we are not going to force it outside on other things as much. So I think that could be a kind of, round.